This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so I have a call to order. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here tonight for this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of Town of Mono. I welcome you all, and as directed, I wanted to draw all of your attention to your very own emergency exits, just to encourage you to keep that in the back of your mind in case something radical happens in your neighborhood. Conflicts of pecuniary interest may be declared now in relation to the two matters on the agenda, or they can be declared at any time during the meeting. We have an agenda in front of us. Thank you very much, Susan and David. And are there any additions or changes that anyone wishes to make to the agenda? Thank you very much. Someone is quite loud on their. Can everybody hear that interference?
Yes.
Yeah. I can.
Well, we'll test ourselves as we go through and see if it diminishes.
Sure.
Seconder for the agenda, please.
I will.
I will.
Thank you, Brenda. Appreciated. All in favor? Seeing no one against. Thank you very much. Adopted. Approval of the minutes of the meeting of March 30th of this year. Thank you very much for preparing those minutes. Much appreciated. Are there any changes or amendments that anyone wishes to draw our attention to first? Seeing none, could we have a motion to adopt the minutes of the meeting of March 30th, please?
I will move that. Jerry Reed.
Here, Jerry, moving that, seconded by Brenda. Thank you very much. All in favor? Very good. Seeing none against, let's have that as adopted. Thank you very much. So with that, let's move on to the matter of the application for a minor variance, A04 2021. The applicant, Charles, is with us tonight.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Very good. I can hear you quite well. And caller number one. Is caller number one related to this file?
I think that's Jerry.
Oh, Jerry.
Jerry.
It's difficult for me to. I should not have mistaken your Zoom identity there. Okay. Shall I ask David to introduce this application, and then as it's maybe needed, then we'll turn it over to Charles and progress through the file of that in that order.
Thank you, Chair Riley. So this is an application for consent under the Planning Act, Section 50, sub 3. And where a tenant with the consent or permission from a landlord is requesting a lease in excess of 21 years, that includes both a
No,
that's the second one.
Let's not deal with that one first. Let's deal with the one that's first on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've got it wrong.
Which we have someone in attendance, and that would be a more generous way of dealing with Charles's time.
Mixed
the hockey game. We gotta get to the hockey game.
We're dealing with the A04. I'm sorry.
I warned you, we get background noise here.
21. This is a minor variance application. Sorry about that. And it's for a property on Mono Agila Town Line 995402. And it's requesting relief under two sections of the general provisions of the bylaw relating to minimum size of an accessory secondary dwelling and the distance from a principal residence. So the applicant, the owners, want to renovate, if you will, an existing barn structure into a guest family suite for immediate family. And that's a synthesis of the application. And because it doesn't meet those two specific tests, more than 50 meters from the principal residence and less than 74 meters gross floor area, it needs a minor variance application. The application was circulated with, as per the second, the Planning Act within 60 meters. Excuse me. The applicant put up a signboard on the property also to allow area residents beyond 60 meters to have an understanding of the application. We didn't receive any queries or comments from area residents in that area at all. As per the application, it is for immediate family. It's a guest suite for immediate family of the owners of the property. And Charles Lindsay was the designer. And if Charles is there, he can certainly add some detail to the background of the application if he so chooses.
Sure, yeah.
Well, thank you. With that said, could I help Charles out here to some degree? And this is a very well-documented application. Might I suggest that we move directly to any particular questions that members of the Committee of Adjustment may have, in as much as that may move things along a little more expeditiously. And
Sure, yeah.
could I first turn to Jerry perhaps and ask Jerry what your commentary or appreciation of this is, and any questions you might want to offer to Charles.
Okay, I don't really have any problem with what's happening. The only concern that I have is going down the road. I don't know what assurances we have that it won't become, and I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth or anything, but that it will become a bed and breakfast or an A&B or another residence or whatever. And I don't know, in today's day and age, maybe that's going to happen too. But anyway, I just wondered what kind of assurances we had that it is just going to be a family suite, etc.
Well, for the time being, myself as the agent have gone on record on behalf of the owners, stating the intended use for this secondary suite by the current owners of the property is solely for friends and family visiting. There's no intention for the current owners of the property to lease it long-term, rent it out, or have it as an Airbnb. That's just not what they want to do. So everyone's on record of the intention and the intended use, but like anything, once the property gets sold in however many years, can't speak for what the next people are going to want to do. That's true for any property.
That's a realistic response, Charles, and I might add that David, perhaps you might comment on the fact that I think this property is more than 20 acres, and in that case, an entirely separate and independent second residence would be permissible on that property.
That's true. I mean, the other thing is that we could request that it be, any decision or a favorable decision from committee be included with any future offer of sale and purchase as well, so that any new prospective buyer would understand the nature and purpose of that secondary suite. So that could also be requested, I suppose.
Question, David.
Beg pardon?
David,
My intention certainly is not to put a whole bunch of restrictions on it. I just, that's just a question that I think is, as a good planning committee would do, we should do our due diligence on that kind of thing unless we're going to change the Planning Act.
No, it's a fair question, Jerry, and I mean, at the end of the day, the use must be a permissible use under the zoning bylaw. So we have that hook, that mechanism to rely on if there's an issue, and we can pursue enforcement if indeed things go awry in the future down the road. I don't foresee.
Sure.
it.
No, that's all my comment was for.
Yeah, it's a fairly
Thank you
small.
very much. Thank you, Jerry. Brenda, could I ask you for any comments or queries you might have?
the only, well, I was just going to ask about should it ever become Airbnb or whatever, it would need to have a permit anyway, like a license or something like that. Probably.
We don't have licensing for businesses presently, although I can see down the road that could become a requirement. Many municipalities do have business license requirements. We're not there yet as a rule, but it's a possibility. But again, we can rely on the enforceability of the permissible uses under the zoning.
Yes, and down the road too, it could be a granny flat, which is quite permissible as well, right?
Quite right.
We're not-
Quite right.
It's family
And
related.
I drove by the property today, and it is a gated property, but I do appreciate the fact that it looks to be a very private family residence and property, and I had that same concern that Jerry expressed, but then I looked and I just thought, well, this is an ancillary family addition, and it's like a bunkie at the cottage. So, and it's about the same size for that matter. So I'm quite willing to trust the owners in what their expressed intentions are.
I had one question, Chair Riley, of Charles, and that is there's a second floor. What's the intention of the second floor? Because my understanding is the habitable area is on the ground floor.
The habitable area is about half of the ground floor, which would be the heated, insulated, habitable space. The remainder of the barn is just storage. It's open area. There's an open loft similar to the second half of the main floor. Just open space.
All right, thank you.
My experience of open space at a farm is that it fills almost immediately. It's like a magnet.
Yeah, that's not just on a farm. That's on.
Bob McRae, could I ask you about queries you might have of Charles?
No, I have none other than what's already been expressed. But I was confident that everything is in place. That this is a good application that I support at this point in time.
I have one question, Charles, and that is that is my reading of this correct? That you are going to the degree possible, maintain the old structure of this shed and the the post and beam construction its origins?
Yeah, the existing structure. So my client, the present owners, are relatively new owners to the property, and the previous owners took just exquisite care with the entire property, all of the structures on it. So this barn currently it's not a barn anymore. It's been everything's been sanded, cleaned. It's got a polished concrete floor in it already. It's got stone veneer over portions of the outside. So it's not your typical barn with a mow and a hayloft. It's already a beautiful structure. And the intention is to maintain all of that. It's a rural property. They want to keep it as a farm, not necessarily a working farm, but they like the style, they like the architecture, and we're maintaining that throughout all, even the finishes that were picked for the project already. Everything's rustic, rural, farm.
Well, Charles, I compliment you on that, and please pass my compliments as chair on to the owners. It is all too easy for these structures, which are now well over a century old, to get passed by and to be lost. And I believe, Charles, you may want to follow this up with the town, that if you're restoring an old building or retrofitting an old building, there are no development charges attached to the building permit. I don't know I can't quote the sections of that, but I know it applied to my one of my 170-year-old structures, because it's part of, I think, the community's encouragement to keep that heritage intact.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you for the information. We'll definitely look into that.
And just one other compliment, that is the most exceptional signboard by the roadside that I've ever seen in the town of Mono. So
It's the best they could do with the time we had.
it's incredible. Anyway, so all that being said, do we have someone who might make the motion to adopt the recommendation as it's expressed currently in the planning report on page 3?
Jerry Reed, I will make that motion.
Moved by
also,
Jerry and seconded by Bob McCrae. Have you got that, Susan? Thank you very much. All in favor? Not seeing your hand, Jerry. I can only
Here.
assume you're in favor. That's excellent. All appreciated. Thank you very much, Charles. And I hope this project goes as well as you've planned it to be.
Well, thank you very much, committee. Have a lovely evening. Take care.
Thank you for attending, Charles. I appreciate that.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Which brings us to the second matter in front of us, which is the matter of an application for consent B02 2021, which David is anxious to speak of, so clearly anxious as to move it up in the agenda. So David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Riley. And of course, we're being very expeditious because it's before 7:45. I'm just wondering if the applicant is online, and I'm looking at Andrew Dahmer. If you're able to enlighten me, Andrew, I don't know if you can, and whether we can contact the applicant. I don't see anyone yet online. I can go forward with my review of my report, but we're more than 20 minutes away from 7:45.
I don't see in my agenda any mention of times, and frankly, I was mortified to think that the Committee of Adjustment meeting would last for 2 hours. So I think what you're saying to me is that you anticipated that dealing with the other matter would take 45 minutes, and
It's hard to tell. You have to guesstimate. You don't want to undercut the time, but
do we need to have a representation by them, or can we move expeditiously on this? And I mean, I would really look forward to your explanation of this. Is a novelty for me to understand this particular quirk of the Planning Act. And I read it closely. I thought, well, this is quite novel. And but I think I understand its scope. And perhaps you could take it through us. And if we have no objections and deal with it expeditiously, then David, you could stay online and greet our guest later on after we've all gone on to the hockey game.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I can do that. I'm going to mute my microphone, Chair. I'm going to make a quick call to the applicant because clearly they're anticipating being online shortly, and I've got their cell number. Give me a second, I'll call.
David, just to interject, sorry. There was also a resident that was interested in joining. So
Yes.
this is partially the problem with us trying to do 2 in one night and have them not all on at one time. So they also are aware to join between 7:30 and 7:40, I believe.
45.
So there's that concern too, because if they want to ask questions.
Yeah, that was passed on to the applicant and they did answer, but okay, so
Why don't you
dealing with
make
some
those
technical
telephone calls and
Yeah.
see what you can
Take
do,
5.
and we can have some discussion as we go forward and fill up the time. But for future reference, perhaps let's
Everybody online.
assume more speed and in our planning of times. I think
Okay.
Zoom can accommodate it, and if someone needs to tune in for some discussion of an earlier item on the agenda, that's how it works when people show up in person at committee meetings, and it would just reflect the real world.
Okay, bear with me. I'll just make this call quickly.
Moving forward and based on my experience over the years that I've been on the Committee of Adjustment, typically these issues take about 10 minutes. So Susan, you're relatively new to this but I can't recall many of them. Brenda and Jerry maybe and John could give their support to that, but I can't remember many of them that went much, if at all, over 5 to 10
Only if
minutes.
it had to do with gravel pits, Bob.
Yes, yeah. That's right.
There are exceptions, but Susan, I'd welcome you if you are setting particular times that you share that with the chair so that I can I have some knowledge of what you are doing with my meeting.
Yeah, sorry, John. It was on the agenda. Did you say you didn't have times on your agenda?
I apologize, Susan. I do. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I should have got in touch with you and sought an amendment.
No problem. Yeah, next time I can also just follow up with you to make sure it looks good.
I'm just calling the contact person now, Chair Riley. Oh, hi, Matt. How are you? How are you? We're running ahead of schedule here. I wonder if you can get online now for the Best Buy Medical on Mono Plaza. Nope, we left a bit of time here, so you can come on right now if you don't mind. We're ready for you. Thank you, Matt. Bye-bye. So Matt Sarowski, on behalf of Best Buy Medical, is coming on now. I think in future, what we'll do is we're trying to keep it to 2 or 3 applicants, but I think we'll just have everyone show up at 7 o'clock. And
I think
You
this
know,
is a good idea, and
yeah, I
and
mean,
put the short
it
ones
may
first.
mean
And
that applicant 2 and 3 may have to sit on their thumbs for a few minutes, but at least they're all present. We can move forward, right? So that's just the nature of the business under COVID.
well, that's normally the nature of the business when they're public meetings and people represent themselves. You show up at the beginning of the meeting because that's when everybody is taking their seats and sitting down. And
Correct.
And,
Susan, do you have the email at hand that came in from the residents at 1 Campbell? Just make that available. I know that Matt Sorowski, on behalf of Best Buy Medical, did answer that, correct? You're muted.
Susan,
You're
do you
muted,
want to
Susan.
unmute yourself?
Sorry, I'm just typing an email to them to see if they can join early as well. I don't have a phone number, but I can pull up their questions also.
Yeah, Matt Sorowski did respond, so we can simply review that should they come on late. So we can at least say that we've dealt with it under forum. So Matt Sorowski should be joining right now. He's trying to get online now.
David, you also could just describe to us the email that was received. You know, I know part of the normal procedure is you talk about comments that are received and the like. So if we can't get that person who sent the email, then you can certainly talk about it.
Sure thing. I'm going to see if I can find. Do you have it on hand, Susan, or I can go search for it myself?
Welcome, Matt.
Hi, guys. How is everybody?
Hi, Matt.
Good evening, Matt. Thank you for joining us.
Can everybody hear me
Appreciate
okay?
it. So I can hear you. Everyone else
Okay,
hear?
great.
Yeah.
That's good. And
Always good to do the mic check.
we're thinking of first turning it over for David to introduce your application and speak to the particular need of this under the Planning Act, and then you could speak to it if you wished. But we also have apparently a representation from an interested party. It's said to be an email which has not been shared with the Committee of Adjustment members yet, but there's a possibility if that person tunes in that they can do that directly, and if they do not, in their absence, we can go through the subject matter. Susan or David could read the email and we can go through it question by question as after we deal with questions by committee members. Does that seem a good way to approaching this, everyone?
Works for
Yeah,
me.
that works.
So with that, let's turn it over to David, and you can explain this to us. That would be much appreciated.
Thank you, Chair Riley. So this is a consent application under the Planning Act under Section 50 sub 3 for a long-term lease. So in excess of 21 years. Now, that includes both a principal lease and a renewable option. So in this case, it's 20 years, but with a 20-year renewable option. So obviously then aggregately over 21 years. It's in my report. It's for the building on a separate building south of Mono Plaza, but on the broader aggregate Mono Plaza lands known as 633-387 Highway 10, obviously on the east side of Highway 10. My understanding is there's going to be no change in entrance. There's no changing in servicing. It is in proximity, this existing building, to the NVCA or an NVCA regulated area. So this is a change of use. You can see the prescribed recommendations I put in at the last page of my report. I can tell you I did a number of these things at the City of Barrie. This is not new to me. Long-term leases, more of an urban flavor generally, but again,
And what
highway
is
commercial
the
zone.
change of use, David?
The change of, well, I don't know what the previous use was, Chair Riley. I really don't, but it is a change of use. So professional service, wholesale supply, I would think. Um, I mean, again, not a major leap by any measure. It's still a
Right.
commercial highway type
It's
use.
a commercial use.
It is, but it would still have to be vetted under the Ontario Building Code Act review. There may be some larger changes under code review, but it's a change of use. Again, not unusual by any stretch. They're simply taking over an existing building for a new use, a commercial use, which is a permissible use in a highway commercial zone.
Right.
I don't foresee MTO, Ontario Ministry of Transportation, having any substantive concerns or requirements, but it is in there as a recommendation that the applicant get, I would suspect, likely a clearance letter from MTO, but due diligence nevertheless. Pretty much the same thing with MVCA, a due diligence, probably a clearance letter. It could be a condition with permit, a permit with conditions, although again, likely a clearance letter. So
Right.
those are due diligence recommendations under my report. Again, there's a typical requirements, pay all of any if they are existing, any outstanding charges, taxes, and so on and so forth. And then there's this provision because it is under section 53 that there be a provision that, you know, the applicant through their solicitor confirm that all matters under the Plan Act will be fulfilled and addressed. It's in there as a condition.
Right.
I think there's a development agreement, Matt. I don't know. And if there is from the original Mono Plaza, so again, before my time, I have not seen such an agreement if there is one. Your demising wall plans for the change of use should simply be appended to that agreement under site plan. That's not a huge leap of faith by any measure. I've included there, you know, because I don't know what your signage provisions are. So I did include there our dark sky policy, and being mindful that MTO also has light pollution or interference mitigation measures on Highway 10. So you'd have to comply with our sign bylaw, which you would anyway, and dark sky policy. So I put that in as well. And then it's for the prescribed area, the 0.97 acres of land and building to the south of Mono Plaza. Beyond that, I don't know that I really have any concerns at all. The report's straightforward.
Well, thank you, David. Can I ask Matt? You've had a chance to look at this planning report and the recommendation and the conditions attached. Do you have any specific objections to any of these conditions?
No, nothing jumped out at me. I think it's important to note that the property is, as David mentioned, part of the larger Mono Plaza property. So we're simply, the land lease is just for that 0.97 acres, obviously. I know we have subtenants in that building now. I can speak a little if you'd like me to, in terms of what their business is and what that means for traffic. It's actually probably less large truck traffic than what we had in there previously. So it's just passenger vehicle type of traffic now. Signage, I don't believe they have any lit signage out. They did put a panel in Mono Plaza's larger sign that's out by the highway. But I'm assuming that signage is already up to snuff for you guys in terms of the bylaws. So I know they're not planning any large kind of obtrusive or bright signage there as our subtenant either. So you know, really, there's no plans for expanding the building or building anything else onto it. You know, I don't know if there's anything else I can really speak to, but unless you guys had any other questions.
Thank you, Matt. We'll proceed on that basis. Could I just follow up on one of the conditions, David? Why did you include the phrase under condition 1, including any development charges, if applicable? I don't understand how DCA fees would relate to a lease when it's the same use as before.
So it was really regarding any outstanding municipal fees and charges. I put DCA provision in there. I did say as applicable, because I wasn't sure at the time, Chair Riley, if although it's an existing building, they would reply retroactively. To answer your question shortly, I don't think they would. And
Right.
so if they don't, that aspect dies on its own, if you will. That's the only reason.
Okay. Well, that's I
Just with an
appreciate
abundance
you.
of caution, that's about it.
With that said, can we ask members for? Oh, David, you want to say something first?
I do, only because I want to make sure there's proper clarity here with respect to those who've made inquiry. And I know Matt did respond, and I thank you, Matt, for responding to the owners on, I think it was 1 Campbell. So you did respond in an email here back on.
Well, before we do that, David, I would like to talk the committee members to go through their questions first, and then pay attention to the email that has come in, and those questions and any others that may arise from attendees at the meeting. So let's go in reverse order. Bob, could I ask you first for comments and queries of Matt?
I have no issues with this, but frankly, I'm curious about what the resident at 1 Campbell had to say, because it might affect any question that I might have.
Well, once we've gone through ours and we entertain those questions, either directly or through the email, then we'll have another round and see if there's anything to be picked up. Is that satisfactory, Bob?
Very good. Yes, thank you. Having said that, I have no other questions, and I have no problem with this at all.
Brenda, could I ask you for any questions or
I
suggestions?
don't have any questions, Chair. I support this application as well.
How about caller 01, aka Jerry?
Yeah, I don't have any questions, except that I kind of wonder why we're dealing with this. It's a long-term of an existing building. It seems to me like it's bureaucratic crap.
Thank you very much, Jerry. I got well into it before I realized, oh, this is just some strange quirk of the Planning Act that has to be genuflected to. But I appreciate you putting it in fewer words than that. Corinne, could I ask you for comments or suggestions? Hello, Corinne, are you there? I see Corinne trying to activate her mic unsuccessfully, which is too bad. Whoops. Oh, there, I see a comment. I have no issues with this application and support the application. Thank you very much, Corinne. Now, is it David Roth who posed the questions or sent the email?
Yes, it is.
Seeing a nodding head from Susan, I think that's a yes. David, could I ask you to speak with us and through us direct questions or suggestions to Matt or to us, and following that, we'll ask committee members again for their comments. David, over to you.
Are you able to hear me at all?
I can hear you. I see nodding heads elsewhere.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for taking my questions. I had 3 in my email, and the 2 were mainly about traffic and Highway 10. Any modifications will have to be done in order to accommodate any of the warehouse traffic that's going to go back and forth.
Would you guys like me to answer?
Yes, Matt.
Yes. So thanks for your question. We don't anticipate any kind of modifications needed. As I mentioned to the committee members earlier, the traffic that will be coming and going for our subtenant is light vehicle traffic. Maybe the occasional trailer, enclosed trailer, almost like a snowmobile trailer or something like that. The tenant is actually a home builder, so they're mostly office space in the building, plus a little bit of light assembly. So no tractor trailers or large trucks or equipment coming and going, no special turning lanes that I could foresee being required. It's just normal vehicular passenger type traffic.
Okay, great, thank you. And my last question was a little bit strange maybe, but since it was a medical warehouse supply, I was wondering if this was going to attract any unsavory elements, I guess you could call it. You know, if it would be a target for crime or anything like that, just because it's medical supply and maybe high value.
Yeah, previously it was medical supplies. It was primarily ostomy and urological supplies, so not a very pleasant or high-priced or valuable thing for the common criminal. But it's not that anymore. The tenant that we have in there now, like I mentioned, is Ferguson Fine Homes. They're from Orangeville. I'm sure you guys recognize the name. So primarily office space now with a little bit of assembly area and probably some tool storage. That would be pretty much the only thing of value that I could hazard a guess that might be there. But the building is very secure. I will say that there's locks and security. There is quite a significant security apparatus within the building as part of its infrastructure. So it's with any business, obviously there's a risk for break-ins or so on, but nothing like prescription drugs or anything that would have any kind of instantaneous street value that would incur a lot of unsavory characters roaming the neighborhood.
Could I ask once more, Matt? I didn't quite catch it on the audio. What were the medical supplies that were trafficked there earlier?
So when we first purchased the building, when we were the tenants, ostomy and colostomy supplies.
Oh, got it.
Urological supplies, so catheters, drainage bags, things like pen needles and syringes, tube feeding supplies. So, nothing that an ordinary run-of-the-mill thief would have any interest in.
Right, and nothing indicating that you might have any concerns about cleanup before your new tenant takes over. Yeah,
no,
very good.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Well, with that said, Bob, I'll turn it back to you. First, I'll ask David if you have any additional queries or concerns about the responses that you heard.
No, that's great. Those answers were perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David.
I mean,
Bob? Yes, David?
I've crafted recommendations, which includes clearance from.
No, I told all the members that once David and Matt had their conversations, I would ask all the members whether or not they had any matters arising from that discussion. So, Bob, are you satisfied?
Absolutely, and I'll reiterate, I support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda, any additional queries?
No, none.
Jerry?
No, go ahead. Get it done, Matt.
I'm satisfied. Thank you very much. Well, with that, I would turn people's attention to page 4 of the planning report that David has put together as a recommendation with 9 conditions attached, which Matt has reviewed and informed us that he has no outstanding issues with at this time. So do I need any further discussion of this, David, or can I ask for a resolution to move said resolution?
I think so. I would just simply answer Jerry's question about why is this necessary. it's under the analysis of my report, Jerry. So where there's something in excess of 21 years, it does require consent. Because
Yes, I think
provincial
Jerry's
policy,
question generally
legislation
was,
rather, is
why would
considered for a
anybody
plan to.
care? And
Sorry,
we
what?
don't need to
Yeah, I get
answer
it.
this. This
So
is
that's
totally
why.
rhetorical. So,
Sorry, what's
I hope
that,
that
John?
answers your question, Jerry.
What was that?
well, I just said it's
I
your question is largely rhetorical, Jerry, because it's one of those quirks of the Planning Act that no one's got around to
Right.
correcting or vetting or deleting. So we're going through the motions, and we're trying to make this as pain-free as possible for Matt and for David and other interested parties.
No, and I appreciate that. I just really think that as planners or committee of adjustments, committees, whatever, we should take a look at those kind of things, because it has really taken about 30 minutes of 5 people's very valuable times to discuss something that I'm not sure that really needs to be done. And I've planted 7 acres of soybeans since we've been discussing this. And I guess I really got to wonder, when we talk about Canadian productivity, if we're really serious about Canadian productivity, if we let that kind of a thing dissuade a small business that's trying to get by a business and go forward, because he obviously was not going to change the world with leasing for 21 years on this building.
Well, there
with what
you go.
to do with it.
I agree with you, Jerry. Let's not belabor it. Perhaps an action item that arises is that we request, as feasible, our director of planning and his able assistant to keep a running list of those things which, when the opportunity arises, can be sent in from the town of Mono to correct the Planning Act, etc., to streamline them. I wouldn't want your thought lost, Jerry, but I think the planning staff should have a running list of these things and deal with them appropriately when the occasion arises. Things tend to get more complicated over time instead of
very
getting
important
simpler.
that I get a chance to say and ask questions about something that's going to affect my neighborhood. So I don't think this is a waste of time, nor should it be considered a waste of time, nor should it be made fun of, because I think my concerns are valid and I needed an answer.
Absolutely, David.
I don't think it was made. I wasn't making fun of it at all. I'm not in any way, shape, or form. I just think we should very seriously look at these things.
Agreed. We should look at these things.
Just to follow up on David Roth's inquiry, and by the way, I appreciate the fact that you took the time to make that inquiry. And by the way, I appreciate the fact that Matt Sarowski took the time, in his, well, obligated as much, but did respond in a timely fashion to you. I have, Mr. Roth, put in my recommendations that the applicant obtain either permit or clearance letter from MTO. I think that answers 2 of your questions. And I suspect MTO really won't have any issue with this, but due diligence dictates that Matt and his team follow up with MTO and do that due diligence. And then, of course, your other question is quite straightforward. I mean, anyone could assume that, you know, is there going to be a risk here? As it turns out, I don't think so. So no, I appreciate the fact you took the time to come on board tonight as an interested resident and voice your concerns. So thank you very much.
I'm happy to move this along and move a recommendation that we approve this application, if that's appropriate, Chair.
Thank you, Bob. Could we have Corinne is seconding that. Thank you very much. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed?
Yes.
Hearing none, seeing none. Thank you very much, Matt and David and committee members and planning staff for addressing this matter.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
Is there any other business arising this evening that any members would like to discuss? Seeing and hearing none, I ask for a motion to adjourn.
I will move. Jerry Reed.
So move, Jerry. Thank you. Seconder,
Happy to. Bob?
Bob, all in favor.
Brenda,
Brenda, seconded by Brenda. Thank you very much. And Corinne's in favor. We're all in favor. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Chair Riley.
Thank
We'll
you
be in
again.
touch
Members,
soon.
thank you. To Mr.
Thank
Roth,
you.
thank you for attending. And to Mr. Sarowski, thank you for attending.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Susan.
good night
Thanks,
all.
thank you, Susan. Thanks, Susan, for your help.
Thanks, John.